Good evening, everybody. It's nice that you joined us for another evening of the research lab of the Liebling House. My name is Yron-Gullan. I am the program director of the Liebling House. We are a municipal body, part of the engineering department and the art department, actually. But we're also partly German, so the German Ministry of Interior is also supporting us. And we are dealing with urbanism, with architecture, and with conservation. And today I'm very honored to present two speakers, of which Dr. Hila Oren is also part, actually, of our founding fathers, as the Tel Aviv Foundation was also inaugurating the partnership with the German government 2019 or even 2015 when we first signed the contract. The Liebling House is open to the public, so I'm really happy to bring you all those interesting podcasts and webinars here, but you're more than welcome to come visit us. We have exhibitions, we have a coffee shop, we have great spaces to work. And of course, we do a lot of research, and this is what we're going to show you today. The fields of our interest is what we bring here from our research lab. So I'll just briefly present our speakers today. So I'm very happy to have this international bilateral, actually, discourse with Amy Carter. She is a CEO of Christ Foundation, and she's going to tell us more about it in just a bit. But first, we are going to hear Dr. Hila Oren, CEO of the Tel Aviv Foundation, who's also supporting us. And she's a city making city maker, a passionate city maker. And she also shares her passion for urbanism. And this is also something we're going to hear from her just in a few minutes. I'm just inviting you here to ask us questions. So there's a Q&A button just on the bottom of your page where you can just write whatever is interesting you and what you hear. And we'll have 15 minutes by Hila, then another 15 minutes by Amy. And then we'll have a conversation, the three of us, and then we'll have a Q&A. So please feel welcome to raise your hand and ask or write us. And having said that, please, Hila, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I'm so happy to be here. Good evening to everyone. And good morning to Amy and New Zealanders. You won't believe it. It's 7 a.m. New Zealand time. It's summer. It's beautiful. I wish I was there. But we're going to focus on Tel Aviv and urban philanthropy. So with your permission, I'll share my screen and let's see me doing it. Of course, I have a, let's see if I can do it. Okay, do you see my screen?
No, actually not yet.
Actually not yet. So wait a minute.
Okay.
Maybe
we'll give you a few minutes to organize. I'm just going to tell the story how Amy and Dr. Hila Oren met. So Hila was invited for residency in New Zealand, where they brainstormed together. They brought Hila as an expert from Tel Aviv, maybe enriching the discourse, this international discourse, and finding or sharing their passion for philanthropy. Amy, when was this?
2018, Hila came out, which was fantastic. Mm.
So, Hila, this was just after you finished your position at Global City?
It was actually in the middle. I just finished my PhD. I was here already at the Tel Aviv Foundation, but I took 6 weeks off. The mayor was very generous with me, and I took a very long vacation, and I came on my free time to be on 6 weeks with New Zealand.
Yeah, so today our subject is urban philanthropy, and I think this subject is perhaps more than ever so relevant to the times we are speaking or we are living just now. You know, taking care of our communities, taking care of a lot of different kinds of communities in the city has become something that we must cherish as urbanists. So Hila, are you ready with your presentation?
So we're doing our shared screen now. Just let me know that it's okay.
Yeah, it's going.
Great. So from the research lab, urban philanthropy, as you define me, Sharon, I'm a city maker. I always say I'm not a shoemaker, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm a little bit of a matchmaker. This is exactly what we're doing here. But at the end of the day, I'm a filmmaker. That means, I'm a city maker, which means not building something new, but taking whatever is there. There we go. Where is my, let me see if I can move to the next slide. Yeah, we're talking, it's an era of urbanism, right? So by the 2050, I think 75% of the population in the world is going to live in cities. And Professor Saskia and Sasson already coined the term of a global city. Tel Aviv sees itself as a leading city with an international business center and a direct influence on global affairs. When we made this slide 20 years ago, we wanted to see Tel Aviv as one of the 20 leading cities. New York, Tokyo, London, Paris, these are the cities when you close your eyes and the globe goes around, the stock exchange don't stop working, businesses don't stop working. This is what a global city is. Tel Aviv is perceived as such a leading city, although we still have to learn a lot and do lots of development in order to be part of the real top tier of the cities. But the next shift as global cities, where the focus is to shift from global to local. When you go out in the city, when you go to the public spaces, you want to feel local wherever you go. If you're in Paris, if you're in Christchurch, if you're in Tel Aviv, or if you're in Kyoto. Now, in order to do that, each city needs to define its own DNA. What is that unique selling point, that USP that is only in Tel Aviv and not in other places? When you'll go to Christchurch, you'll feel in the air the exploring DNA. But when you come to Tel Aviv, it's all about entrepreneurship. It's all about the startup city. We are the first Hebrew city, the vibrant of nonstop. And of course, the white city with the biggest concentration of Bauhaus buildings. This is why UNESCO declared Tel Aviv as UNESCO Heritage Site in 2003. And this is part of the reason why Liebling House is initiated and being the center for us for the white city. But I pointed that out because we need to keep on upholding the diverse and inclusive city, which provides people from all walks of life. You see this picture, it really, I think, gives the image of how a public space is hosting and giving us all the feeling that we are equal, that we are wanted, that we can enjoy the public space. And especially at COVID-19, this is where we feel more safe and more welcome. Sorry, let's see here. As Professor Richard Florida said, the creative class brings that energy to global city. Now we must make sure that 3 T's are being promoted: the talent, the technology, and tolerance. These 3 T's, talent, technology, and tolerance, are part of being a global city. But this is, in a nutshell, the way we feel about urbanism in the last 10, 20 years. Urbanism needs to meet a tool that will make sure that well-being is there. Philanthropy, actually by the dictionary of Merriam-Webster, is goodwill to fellow members of human race. It's doing good. This is what philanthropy is all about. Urban philanthropy is just I think the difference between charity, which aims to relieve the pain of particular social problems, whereas philanthropy attempts to address the root cause of the problem. And urban philanthropy is finding new tools, financial tools or other tools that helps urban life being better they really make an impact on our well-being, on the quality of life, and we're all part of it. Architects, builders, private sector, public sector. The new, I think, tool that is the new kid in town is urban philanthropy, is a tool, again, that addresses the root cause of the problem. Now, 2020 brought a new term into the world, a VUCA world. It's all about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. We all feel it. Sharon feels it, Amy feels it, I feel it, anyone in the street feels it. It's part of our life. The Tel Aviv Foundation puts its goal to help, to give a relief to that, to bring new resources so we can help the people most in need to feel a little bit better and that their well-being will improve. How do we do that? COVID-19 response. Middle of March, we understood that we need to initiate the Mayor's Emergency Fund. Now, I think just about beginning of February, Amy, we met in Sydney, Australia, and you shared with me and my team about the fund, that the emergency fund you did after the shooting. In Tel Aviv, when COVID-19 came, we understood that we need to provide an immediate community-specific solution. So we didn't really know yet what to do, but we understood that if we want to improve the well-being of those affected most by the pandemic, we need to initiate this fund and to look how we define specific communities to keep Tel Aviv vibrant, inclusive, tolerant, and that spirit alive, that nonstop. How do we do it? We defined 8 different communities. We started first with small business owners. Now I put the small business owners and the artists first because usually Tel Aviv Foundation never took care of artists or never took care of small business owners. We believe in Tel Aviv, the mayor believes that business needs to go by economy, to have its own rules. But we understood that the rules are changing and we need to give a hand over here, even to small business owners, because otherwise they won't live through it. Then we understood that senior citizens, women suffering from domestic violence, which really went up because of everybody staying in the houses and the stress was so strong. Asylum seekers, the Jaffa community, welfare families, and youth at risk all needed a direct relief and a direct hand. Two tools I wanted to point out. First is the City Coin, which encouraged residents to shop local and support business during their most challenging times. We started out with Kolu, which you can look it up at the app, and you can look in our website, the Tel Aviv Foundation website, the whole system and the whole process that we did with them, but it really gave a boost to those local businesses. And the second community that really needed us is the Artist Fund. We never gave grants before to artists. We never gave free loans before what we do now. And we support projects because these people that give us all the energy, all the smell and the aroma of the city, at one day, 1 minute, had no income. We had to give a hand. So these two, I think, are in a focus. We learned a lot from New Orleans Fund through the Bloomberg Foundation, which brings us also to learn from our mates all over the world. And this brings me back to understand the residents' shifting needs, and to create a change is by listening to your residents through your technology, through our digital card, through our mates and collaborations, through the public sector and the private sector. And the last thing that I want to focus is the public pocket spaces. Before, a public space was nice to have. It was nice. We all believed that we need to improve our public space, but now it's a must. It's not anymore a privilege to enjoy it, but we need to move from urban planning to social planning. If we want everyone to feel that they can learn, they can meet, they can work in the public space, we have to give them a sufficient and functional public spaces. I would like to wrap it up that what we do is always about local and global partnerships. The Christchurch Foundation is a sister foundation to us, although it's the other way of the world, and Amy in a minute will elaborate on that. But we both believe in the same values. We both believe that the public space is something that we need to go forward and invest in it. We both believe that our communities deserve the best and that we can help them. And with my small but very, very quality team, I want to say thank you for being able to do all this work together and to reach out the hand to whoever needs for philanthropy, and to all our collaborators, I would say, all our donors that are giving such beautiful gifts to make this urban philanthropy reality. So with this, with these closing remarks, I would like to hand it back to you, Sharon, and I'll stop sharing so we can see each other.
Yes, Tila, thank you very much for this elaborated presentation. We'll get more into detail on what has been going on in Tel Aviv later, because we really saw what's happening on the streets, and I think Tel Aviv has changed dramatically and responded to COVID in an amazing way, in an amazing tectonic way, and I'm sure the foundation is also something to do with that. So we'll go to those subjects later on, but I would like to invite you, Amy, to show the other part of the world, and perhaps then we can draw some similarities. So please, Amy.
Sure. So kia ora, which is Māori, our Indigenous people's way of saying hello. So we, just to give you a bit of context about where we are, I thought I'd just show you whereabouts in the world we are, because we are very much at the bottom of the world, and you might want to be interested. So here's a beautiful shot. We're a small urban rural city based in the bottom of the world, and there you go, you can see us there, and right in the center of the world, as you can see, the maps are all wrong, and further to that is over on the side, you'll see a bump there, and we're next to the top of the dolphin's tail is where Christchurch is. So to give you a bit of context and scene setting, because we appreciate that you may not have heard of Christchurch other for some of the recent issues we've had. We're a small 500,000 population, big urban rural hinterland sitting behind us. We're lots of regional strengths and opportunities. We're really good at making food. We do a lot in health tech. We're an education city. We do a lot in aerospace because there's just not as many planes in this part of the world. And we're doing a lot of work with things like flying taxis, the future of transport. Education city, 2 world-ranked universities despite our small population, but we're globally unique in that we are a Western city with brand new infrastructure and a purpose-built CBD that has recently been rebuilt over the last 10 years, and I'll go into that more in a future. The other thing to think about is that we're an Antarctic gateway, so there's 5 cities in the world that give you access to Antarctica, which is a big part of solving some of the world's issues going forward, and we are one of those stepping off points, in fact the largest. So we rebuilt our city, and the Christchurch Foundation in fact came about in response to a devastating series of earthquakes that hit our city 10 years ago. In fact, yesterday was the anniversary of the largest earthquake that completely flattened 70% of our central business district. We lost over 12,000 residential homes, and it was a pivotal opportunity within our city. So from dark always comes light, and as a response to the fact that there wasn't a vehicle like the Christchurch Foundation around to support those in need, after the earthquakes, the foundation was launched by our mayor. So we are an independent organisation, but we do have a sister organisation now in the UK that I also run, and about to launch one in the US. Our focus is to help people that love our city help us become the best city of our size on the planet. And we are a city that Gila knows well, who bats above our weight. We may be small, but we are influential. The global suffragist movement formed here in Christchurch by a lady called Kate Shepherd. We were the first city in the world to legislate the right for a woman to have an education, and the first country in the world to give women the vote. So we can change the world from the bottom up. So we were established as a response to the earthquakes because we didn't have a place for where people wanted to support the city's recovery. There was nothing for them to give to, so that was why we were established. We've been running, unlike Tel Aviv Foundation that's been around forever, we're new, only in our 4th year of operation. However, we're focused on urban philanthropy. Our job is to provide informed philanthropic advice to our donors, and our donors are global. And so in the time since we've started, to give you context, we've raised $16 million, 13 million of that has already gone back into our economy, and over 4 million of that has come from overseas. So we are very much globally focused. And when we look at it in a COVID response, over 12 million of the 16 million we've raised has been a direct response to times of crisis. So it shows you the interest from philanthropists around the world to support people at their hour of need. Like Tel Aviv, this is our operating model, so how we operate. So you'll see that disaster recovery was actually built in there as part of a fundamental service offering from day one. And when we got up and running, we thought it would be at some time, a long way out in the future, that we would actually be required to respond. However, it came about somewhat quicker than we thought when we had a series of traumatic events within our city. We had a major urban fire that ravaged through the hills of the city, destroying homes. And then you may have heard about our city from the 2 mosque terror attacks, where we lost a number of our citizens to an Australian shooter. So we've learned how to respond to times of crisis, and we were very happy to share what we learned from, in particular, responding to the March 15 shootings with the Tel Aviv Foundation and with other foundations around the world. Our work has been picked up and looked at by other entities from the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom as well. And there's a Winston Churchill scholarship research project currently underway around our response to an act of terror, saying that it was world leading in terms of how we did that. In responses to crisis, from what we've learned, having had a few over the last few years, and what we've seen again in COVID, is that you need to lead any recovery from the community up. It's got to be led from the grassroots, and that came through very quickly. So in the instances in particular where we've collected funds to support at-risk communities, we've very much involved those communities in the decision-making process around how those funds should be used and invested. So ensuring that they get a say in their future. And we learned that from the earthquakes. Where we saw people lose hope was where they felt they didn't have a voice. And it's incredibly important when times are tough that people feel that they have some control over their future and that they have a voice. And it is critical in any response to a crisis that is part of that process. And even when it comes from generosity, making decisions in a room, albeit well-informed and in isolation, but not involving community, can mean that the best intentions miss the mark. So you do have to involve the community to be part of that process. So our response to COVID's been somewhat different than Tel Aviv's. We're an island nation, so we literally shut our borders, and in fact There's very few cases of COVID here. We have no community spread, and we're living life relatively normal. We've had the concert in our Hagley Park, beautiful Hagley Park, a few months ago, where there was, 40,000 people dancing together and singing in the sunshine. Life for us is somewhat more normal than the rest of the world. So there's been, however, tourism is a very key part of New Zealand's economy. So small businesses in the tourism sector in particular, and businesses within our CBD have suffered hard, just losing those international tourists. So our response to COVID was a little different. We've focused on doing things in the central city that created vibrancy and attracted people back into the heart of our city. So we've wrapped around the local rainbow community, for example. It's Pride Week here in a couple of weeks' time, and we are working with them to amplify their activities to showcase the diversity in our city and the tolerance of our city. And we're working on other things that can activate and excite people and encourage them to come here to Christchurch from other parts of New Zealand, spend their money and celebrate here. We've also focused heavily on nature. And I think what we've all seen from COVID around the world is the need and the desire to contact more with our environment and our world. So a big part of our work now is focused in that space and creating opportunities for residents in our city to feel grass between their toes, to hear birds in their streets, and to reconnect our city and as an environment and making it a modern garden city full of native species. So that's been played out in a few ways. And we know this reason we've done these focus areas is because the community told us that was important to them. So we asked residents of our city last year what was really important to them, and they came back with 3 key areas of focus. So city vibrancy, kaitiakitanga, which is a Māori term for stewardship and care of the environment, and equity came through, all in the 70 to 80 percentiles in terms of the priorities for residents of Greater Christchurch. So it's on that basis that we've focused our attention going forward. So in that green philanthropy space, we've now partnered with the largest green energy electricity generator in New Zealand, and we're planting 1,100 hectares of trees within our urban environment. That's a carbon offset for them, but it means we get a greener, more sustainable city. So it's a win-win type relationship. And we're actually working on a planting program of scale to bring more bird life back into our CBD by creating corridors of the right kind of food that our birds want to eat to encourage them from the forest into the urban environment, and providing an education program for residents to enable them to plant in their backyard and actually supplying the plants to them as well. We're doing a lot around celebrating exploration, which is part of our city story, and it was Healer that helped us identify that. We are the city of exploration. So we're working on activations and some cool new spaces within our city that celebrates tangata whenua, our Indigenous people, the Māori, and their exploration story, local heroes and the great explorers past and present that have left here to explore places like Antarctica. Vibrant activities around creating excitement, as we've talked about, and wrapping around at-risk communities and using different ways for people to create and connect, because what we saw that we all missed most from not all being in our little bubbles and at home was that ability to be part of something. And so we're doing a lot of work around how we can create connections and give people the opportunity to feel more healthy because of their connection to nature, connection to our city, and connection to people. So that's our focus on crisis change at the moment, in responding to a very different world that we are now all living in. So that gives you a bit of an oversight of what we've been up to. So thank you. I'll stop sharing now and you can go back to you, Sharon.
Yeah, Thank you, Amy. It was a trip to New Zealand for us, very exciting. We all want to come see it now. Yeah, I think when I say that, and I think you mentioned that Hila helped you focus on that, is like, you know, I'm a conservation architect, so I allow myself to use a term which we refer to as genius loci, which means the spirit of the space. So when you come to do conservation, usually you try to find like this DNA that is sort of, you know, inherent to the city. And that is really like also the focal point where tourists want to be part of, no? I mean, tourism today doesn't want to feel like a tourist, as you said, they want to feel local. So this is very important to us as well. So I was just wondering how much, I mean, I'm sorry for the very delicate question, yeah, but New Zealand was also sort of colonial, yeah?
Colonial, yes.
Yeah,
yep.
sorry.
No.
How much of your storytelling is based on this idea of the local inhabitants that were there in the beginning? And how much you as a foundation take care of, you know, keeping this, you know, so indigenous, how did you say that?
Indigenous, yeah. No, you're all doing very well with long English words. So New Zealand was founded on one document, which was a collaboration between the English government and the local Indigenous people, the Māori. So we are legally required to consult on every major decision with Māori, which is fantastic. What we saw out of the earthquakes and our response to rebuilding the CBD was that applied in a much more visible way. So stories from the local mana whenua, people of the land, are now literally woven through the narrative of our city. So that was an opportunity to remove some of the colonial influence and bring some balance to share the two main parts of our story as a nation. And that's unique now. If you look around New Zealand and the other cities, they certainly don't have that same influence. So it's certainly been a big part of our focus as we look to recover. And their concepts, Māoridom's concepts of holistic well-being are now even more apt in a COVID world. So when you think about looking after a person, we think about the whole person in terms of their spirituality, their ability to connect with nature, not just their physical and mental health and well-being. The earthquakes and the subsequent crises that the city's faced has meant we have a significant mental health issue in our city. So that connecting to nature and creating spaces where you can share and be part of something has been critical to the health and well-being of our residents. So that philosophy has been very much applied to all the new city assets that have been developed. And on the day of the earthquakes, when we lost people in our city and we were all looking to find each other, what was clearly evident was where people gathered is where it's important. And I think so those spaces have become a lot more loved, and they were schools, they were in libraries and places where naturally people went to. And I think the other learning from that was we also remembered what's important. And sometimes I think in a modern world, we need a shock to understand that it's all about the people. And Māori say here, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata, which means it's all about the people.
How many of them are there in percentage of the greater community?
Population, about 10%, so not significant. We're more diverse as a city now than Paris, which isn't that diverse, but we're seeing increased diversity here in this part of the world as the appetite to move to places where things aren't quite so busy increases.
So we're talking about resilience, no? I mean, this is
very much so.
When we talk about urban planning, you usually use resilience as sort of a key word when you talk about communities. So Yeah, I think the connection to nature becomes very evident, became even more evident. I mean, we are a garden city. Hila mentioned before that we were nominated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of the big concentration of buildings of the international style, so-called Bauhaus, but it's also that we have this plan, this garden city plan that actually British mandate brought with a Scottish planner. And I think today we all understand that we as human beings perhaps like, you know, had this hubris sort of fatal idea about ruling nature, and the COVID situation really made us very humble. And this connection to nature is now, I think, more important and more interesting than ever before. So I was just, I'm going to throw that back to you, Hila, in terms of sustainability, creating or enhancing the garden city, or enhancing the, you know, the connection of the community to nature. Is there anything that the foundation, the Tel Aviv Foundation, has done in the recent time?
So Tel Aviv Foundation is since 1977. It's like the last 43, 44 years. I think about, if you'd look 30 years ago, 20 years ago, the city was not in such a good shape. We were lacking resources. And the first thing the foundation did is actually brought resources into those little gardens, those little pockets which we developed, those little kikarot, the little squares, I would say, you would devote them to the people that donated, but it brought the greenery outside, although Geddes developed it as so, but it was not cherished, it was not kept so, I would say, developed. And then when the foundation came, it was the first thing that the former mayor Chich put a focus on, is to make those little gardens, those little pocket places. And I think now, after COVID-19, we're going back to that, where we understand that these little places are not only for leisure, and they're not only for fun, and they're not only nice to have, but those are places that are must have.
They're like focal points, no? Like anchors of communities.
Exactly. Look at Kikar Rabin, look at the boulevards, it's the Ben Gurion Boulevard.
Square, it's crazy what's happening there on the weekends now. It's like, wow, yeah.
And even Park HaMesila that was just initiated half a year ago, it's already packed. Why is it packed? Because people need it. It's a must. Again, it's not a luxury thing. This is what we need for our well-being, for our sustainability, for our resilience as a person and as a community, as a city. Now, Tel Aviv and Christchurch, in a way, we're in the other side of the world, but we're both 500,000. We both have lots of minorities. Christchurch have the Maoris. We have the Arabs in Jaffa. They're also only 10%, but they're very, very important, and they are part of the city, just like the Maoris are. So I think us in Tel Aviv, we've got a lot to learn from Christchurch on that matter, because if you would see any talk that I would have there, it would always start with a beautiful blessing in Maori, which I would love that any talk or any assembly in Tel Aviv would start with a beautiful blessing in Arabic. So this is just to take you all the way back to the pocket, to the gardens that you talk, because gardens are in the Mediterranean, are a hosting place for the community, whether it's Tel Aviv, the beach, Jaffa, any neighborhood. This is part of, I think, our new role at the foundation, making those public spaces really hosting and functional.
I think some of it's also, it's about celebrating what you have. And, you know, when we spent time and we've had nothing like the rest of the world, but, you know, I had 6 weeks at home with my children, But the magic of that time was when we were able to go outside and be on a beach or on the top of a mountain. And that's when we felt re-energized and excited, when we're facing all that we're dealing with and the challenges that we're doing. You can feel you get topped up with your energy levels from being in those spaces. So, and that's what cities have missed. You know, it's become all about concrete and glass and steel, and we need to bring those places back to re-energize and to rebuild, recharge our batteries as humans.
Yes, recreation. So I want to get back to philanthropy as a subject, because I just reading the news, you know, you hear more stories like, for example, Jeff Bezos and Mackenzie Scott, which is separated, and then she went and like really spent the money that she sort of had after the divorce on philanthropy in like a very sort of giving large way without asking too many questions. Because in the era we are now, I always feel that, okay, I think Tel Aviv, at least, I don't know where you are from, but it's considered to be a very sort of capitalist approach to the society. You know, it's like real estate is booming and startup, you know, is growing. And I feel that our era, maybe also because of the COVID, but also because of the crisis of, you know, ecological crisis, that we feel the need of inclusiveness, and perhaps more and more people understand that, you know, these resources must be shared in order to create sort of a sustainable city, you know? I mean, like you mentioned, Hila, when the creative scene leaves, then the city is not interesting anymore. But I am really wondering, like, you know, big corporates like, I don't know, Google and Amazon, how do we make them spend their money in a way which is very beneficial and not just, you know, on paper? Because I think there's lots to say about like talking about it, and also how you spend the money and how you know, the money is afterwards regenerated is a very, very interesting aspect. So I don't know if I have.
Yeah, but first of all, at least in Israel, the big companies are not yet educated to donate their money to philanthropy. They're on the way, because I think in the last 10 years, we really got much more money in big corporates, but still not enough. But I can share with you that a very big company, high-tech company, actually in the COVID-19, built a new project because they asked, what's in it for me? What's in it for them? Now, as a technology company, they really need the brilliant students of Chemda, the brilliant students of the startup learnings, to be part of their grassroots and join their firms. So they put a big amount of money in Jaffa to support science studies. So these students, right after their Bagrut, could join, and after the army can join that company. So in a way, they're supporting the young generation, and in a way they're supporting themselves, or they're supporting the economy, because these young kids at the end of the day, in 3-4 years, will join their team. So when you're asking how are big corporates joining philanthropy, they ask them, they ask, what is it for me as a corporate? What's in it for me? And once they define that DNA, that specific strategy that they need, whether it's health, whether it's art, whether it's academy, then they put the money there in a way of investing as an impact, and then it comes back to them in the back door. Amy?
Yeah, I agree. I think that some of it, that most businesses, whether they're a global or a local business, are on a journey of understanding that you won't have a business if you don't have social license going forward. And and the ones that are enlightened look at it holistically in terms of attracting millennials. So future talent is incredibly important to them, and the future generations are very aware of ecological collapse and climate change, and if you're not walking the talk, they'll walk. They won't be engaged with your business. So the younger generations are leading this charge, and which is fantastic. And the enlightened businesses have already understood this. We're getting our corporate partnership programs actually growing, but a lot of them don't know how to do it. So, and that's where the role of foundations like ourselves in Tel Aviv sit in the middle to act as that catalyst between need and where the money's coming from, and making it easier to give, because it is actually hard, which is sad, but it is very hard to do philanthropy well, and you need to support and provide that service offering to help people give in a more impactful way.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. I mean, Greta Thunberg and her marches have really impacted this as well, and I feel also that the young generation really sets the tone here, and philanthropy, I think, today is perceived different than it was used to be. I myself, Hila, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I look at what you're doing and I compare it to perhaps what was done before, then it's less about building community centers. It's more about, like what you mentioned, Amy, understanding the needs of the grassroots, like trying to sense the spirit of the time maybe, and help there. But my question is that, sometimes there's like the saying about, you give money, in what way, It's like the classical story of do you give the fisherman a fishing rod or the fish, So how do you solve that? How do you create projects that are sustainable long-term and not like, very short-term, very specific?
I think it's you obviously need to do your due diligence to ensure that it will survive. But I think things are more likely to survive and have a meaningful impact if it's got buy-in from your community. So our opening conversation with our donors, whether they're a corporate or an individual, if they're based here or in London or New York, is what are your dreams and hopes for our city? And then we match that to research that tells them what's important to the people in our city, and then either build the project to meet that need and that aspiration to make a difference, or then act as a matching service with existing programs that are already there. I think we also, as a sector, as the charitable sector, need to be more, less about ego and more about outcome. And it's very easy to create something because I think it's important and it's important to me, but it perhaps is replicating something that's already offered just down the road. So some of that, we need to be smarter about that as well, and declutter the not-for-profit or the charitable sector. It's very noisy, and if you're someone wanting to give in a way that's going to make a difference, it's hard to navigate, and we've got to take some ownership over that as an industry.
Hila, is there anything you can add there? You're on mute.
I think we moved totally from giving fishes to fishing rods. I mean, first of all, we moved from building buildings into programs. We moved into impact projects like the social bonds for elderly. It is really something that will be there forever. We don't just give, sometimes we give food cards if it's really needed, but it's more about doing programs for food security, learning. For artists, you don't give the money to the needed, you give the money to the program, but you build the program together with a donor. And this is all about collaboration. I think this is also an opportunity for Amy and me to thank all our donors, because definitely. We can't do all this without the gifts we get. And the gift is not, it's not just a wallet, it's a crane, a manof, right?
Crane,
a crane.
Yeah.
which is a tool that helps build and empower economy or other things that are needed. So when you look at Tel Aviv and you look at what the foundation just did in the last, even in the last 5 years since I've been in office, I think we focused very much on this resilient, sustainable issues with our partners, whether they are as donors or from the private sector, which is, I'm very happy marching into the party.
How do you measure your success?
Ooh, great question. I really believe in ROI, return on investment, on measuring. Well, there's different ways to measure. You can measure about where do you get the money from? And I'm very, very glad to share that we get more and more percentage from Israeli donors. This is one way to measure it. Another measure is that we moved into programs from buildings. Another measure is that through COVID-19, there was not one request that was not answered. And that was my key messaging to my team and to myself. We have to make sure that any request that will be asked in any way will always have an answer to that. So this is another way to
elaborate. I didn't get it.
Any request from any manager in town that came up to the foundation, whether it was for food, for communication devices, for programs, for clothing, for you name it, whatever you needed, for loans, for anything, we always had an answer. We always could give a hand. And this is something that was not possible just a couple of years ago. And that is thanks to the way we work with our partners on building specific funds to those specific communities that we talked before. So it's not a regular measurements, okay? It's not you can't weigh it. It's more quality measurements than quantity measurements. But
that's because you're being flexible enough to be able to suit yourself to specific situations and communities, right?
It's about, we're going back to what we said about city makers. It's about us taking off, Sharon, we talked about it so much for so many years, taking off barriers, taking off red tapes and rolling red carpets, making sure that no matter who comes to us, we'll find a way to say a yes as an answer and not a no. And I think this is a very big message for us as urbanists, for us as civil servants, for us as city makers, in all over the world, in any city, in any municipality. We have our work plan, we have our budget, and the easiest answer is to say no. But the challenge is the way to find a yes. And Amy is smiling, so I'm moving it on to you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Our role as a foundation is to be the catalyst for change and impact, and to be agile, which is what government can't do. It's too hard. So on that basis, we sort of fill that gap, and that's where we've seen the most success. In terms of measuring our impact, we've gone around it in quite a structured way. So we actually did perception-based surveys around this United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and asked residents what was important to them, and to give us a grade as a city against each of those development goals. And then every 5 years we go and do a deep dive to see if we've moved that perception, because the biggest critics of your work are the people that live in your city. So if you really want to know if you've made a difference, they'll tell you, and they'll tell you if you haven't as well. And then we do annual research where we dip into the areas we've been focusing over our 5-year plan to ensure that we're actually moving the dial as well around that. So that's important for us, and our donors often ask to us, well, why are you doing that? Where are the issues and opportunities, and how do you know? So by asking our community where they are, that enables us to then be more targeted in where we do stuff. But I completely agree with Hila's statement around you've got to be able to react and be agile in this age, and COVID has shown us that even more. You know, my job was normally flying around the world, planting trees to offset that, obviously, hosting cocktail parties in the major centres of the world where there's critical mass of people from New Zealand. I mean, there's 5 million New Zealanders, and then there's another 1 to 2 million that don't live in New Zealand. So they're a massive opportunity for us. Like Israel, you know, there's Israelis everywhere, there's New Zealanders everywhere. And so we had to pivot the way we did things, and we all did that. So it's just a continuously changing and evolving to meet the needs of our community.
Yeah. Yeah, you were talking, Ayla, about civil servants. I think this is a topic which we also at the Liebling House engage very much in, because we want people to appreciate their city enough to really take care of it. If it's by giving gardening courses in order for people to know how to, you know, take care of their front yards, because we have in the White City these like beautiful gardens as part of our streetscape, and it doesn't really belong neither to the owners of the flats nor to the city. So I think like understanding that you as a citizen have a responsibility towards the place you live in is something that we must all engage in. This sort of civil servants, also teaching it already in schools. And I think this engagement with the environment really shows us that we are in a sort of ecosystem now. The system of a city is a holistic one. It cannot be that there is too much you know, investment in one side and not enough in the other. It doesn't create equanimity and balance. So this is something that the Liebling House really wants to also take care of. And I'm just wondering if there are any regulations as to, you know, how to endorse or to engage donators to take part in the projects. I mean, just for example, I'm coming from architecture, no? But when I was working in London for a while doing housing developments, and there, when you built a certain amount of flats, you had to give, I think, 25% to social housing. It was, you know, part of, you know,
regulations,
necessity in order to get a building permit. So I'm just wondering if there is a way in which we can engage the population with this sort of responsibility towards this sort of holistic approach to community.
Unfortunately, in Israel, it's not yet there. In the United States, it's very strong part of the regulations and part of the system that you have to give back a percentage of what you earn. And this is also connected to the taxes. In Israel, it's just the opposite. In a way, in Tel Aviv, I'm not supposed to get any donation from any developers, because then it would call what we say in Hebrew to all our listeners, hon shilton. This is the way it would be reacted. Although in the States or in New Zealand or in London, it would be just a PPP, public-private partnership, which is very, very, very legitimate. So we're looking, I must say, we're getting to be a little bit more supple in Israel, a little bit more, but still there's a long way until we'll be where we are allowed to collaborate. So I was just today, it's interesting, we had a very talk with our Yoetz Mishpati, with our city council on exactly that issue, that we're not allowed to take money from developers. But if we do take, the way we have to make it transparent. So I think in the next 10 years, at least the Tel Aviv Foundation, we're going to put a lot of focus on working with the government on making education to philanthropy, making new rules with the government, making taxes better, so whoever donates gets a reband on that. it's a process. We're in a better place than we were 5 years ago when I just started my role. But I hope that in 5 years from now, when I'll finish my role, we'll be in a much better place.
How is it in New Zealand, Amy?
Public-private partnerships are on the increase here, which is good. We also, I think, because we're independent, so while we were formed by the city, we were let go. So that enables us to act in that world without being perceived that people are having undue influence over our councillors or our municipality. So that has enabled us to walk with a foot in both camps. I also we have generosity here is high. We're one of the most generous countries in the world, but we tend to give lots of little gifts rather than strategic gifts. So that's a mindset shift that we need to go on as a entity. And we're also very good at volunteering in New Zealand. So our time given to charities is really high compared to the rest of the world. So it is part of who we are to be part of a community. But we've actually got the opposite problem where we need to be a little bit more sophisticated in how we invest our charitable money. So that's the journey that we're going on. Here you can get a tax credit for gifting for up to 30%. And we now have an entity in the UK, which is a registered charity, and actually there the English government top up the gifting from people to come to money here in Christchurch. In America, we're in the process of establishing another sister entity, and that we've got tax credits will be in play there as well, so to incentivize generosity.
Yeah, so sort of like a matching, no? Like to get the ball.
Yeah, I Tinder, is that big in Israel? I don't know. It's I sometimes joke that I'm a little bit like Tinder for philanthropy, where I'm matching.
Like for philanthropist, yeah. Well, I think also in psychology today, or even in like new age, you talk about giving is something so important. It might be even better for you than receiving, no? So
yeah, I mean, you always feel, I don't know, you get such a sense of purpose when you are generous. We know that it's a human trait. Yeah, and I think it's just about bringing some balance back to our view of the world. Capitalism has taken us down one channel, and that's great. And there's been some great things come out of that, as well as some not so good things. And now I think we need to swing it back a little bit more, so it's more about the people.
We need to create a new capitalist environment in which giving is part of earning, I think.
Correct.
And, yeah, let's do that. It's about time. Yeah, well, you do that all the time, but for us it's a sort of a new approach to seeing cities, and we really believe in it. I mean, I think I'm very happy that we started this discourse, and I hope that we can reach more people that are interested in the subject, and perhaps also really start by educating citizenship and civil servants from young age. It's very, very relevant today. We don't have questions from the audience, although somebody said it's called Yadut. What is Yadut? Jewishness?
No, Judaism. It's to give back 10% Maser.
Yeah, even the land, you work the land for 10 years and then you have to...
7. Yeah.
Not 7, sorry, yeah. It's not my strongest part, but you have to let it rest in order to give back to the earth, and then you can harvest again. So yeah, I guess it's from Judaism as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Hila and Amy, I'm inviting you to say some words, invite some people to maybe take part in your projects, and give a little wrapping up of this event. So maybe Amy, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think what we've learned from COVID is what we all share in common, and that we are all humans. And I think that's a really opportune basis for us all to remember what's important in the world and how we all impact on the world and how we make a difference. So I just encourage people to remember that, and that and then we need to also apply that thinking not only to a world where there's COVID, but the bigger issues that are coming, which haven't gone away, which are climate crisis and ecological collapse. And we're certainly here in New Zealand putting our head to that, because we're not so closely faced with COVID. That's our focus, is, and how can we keep moving forward the thinking to address those issues that can then help the world.
Thank you, Amy, so much for participating. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
So I think 10 years ago, when I was exposed to urbanism, I fell in love. I think cities the best playground in the world. And in that journey, in the last 10 years, I got to know more and more cities in the world. And philanthropy, in a way, is a new tool for me, only for the last 5 years. It's a way of saying thank you. So coming to Christchurch 2 years ago, and by the way, thank you to John Luthart that brought me on this journey. It's all about collaborations. It's all about people. It's all about listening and being curiosity, to be curious, and really wanting to learn from each other, giving gifts, getting back, collaborating, all these words that we say them all the time, but if we really take them as part of our journey and work on them and walk the talk and do it, I think you gain so much. So in Tel Aviv, this is what I learned, and I hope that philanthropy will be, although it started in Judaism, it's very, very right. It's a really one of the basic, I would say, stones of Judaism is to give back. But I hope that in the city with urbanism, it'll be part of our day-to-day life, and maybe even in the Liebling House, we'll take some new tools through that, and make our residents enjoy our city even more than they do, because we all love it so much.
Yes, I agree with you. Thank you so much, Ila. To be continued on that. I think we have a lot of subjects to speak about. I would like to invite you to next week, which is very much relevant to our project today, because we're talking about hazchut lediur, so the right for dwelling, or we're talking about social housing together with the strategic unit of the engineering department with Ella Weber and with Yaron Hoffman from Merkaz Adva. And we're going to speak about what it means, what is the responsibility of the nation, of us, to provide housing for people, and why perhaps the way real estate is handled today was not the main idea of Israel when it first started, and what we can learn from other cities around the world. So I would like to invite everybody for next week at 8 o'clock in the evening. And thank you again so much, Sheila and Amy, for joining me today. And I wish everybody a beautiful evening and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Sharon, for hosting us. Bye, Amy. Miss you.
Goodbye. Miss you too. We'll start a good today or tomorrow for you all.
Yeah.
See you later. Bye. Bye.